Hey, I'm Kavya Patel, and this is my How to Read Literature Like a Professor project. My chapter was Chapter 7, which is on fairy tales. To begin, it's important to understand the significance of fairy tales and its connection to literature. The Literary Canon, which is a body of books, narratives, and other texts considered to be extremely influential and important, is useful for any student of literature. However, Foster explains that it can be difficult for the students of today to understand and relate to canonical texts. References to Homer and the Iliad is unlikely to be understood by most students today. James Joyce of the 20th century may be too complex, and Shakespeare too overused. Fairy tales, however, have endured their popularity. Stories that children have grown up on have become engraved into their consciousnesses and therefore have shaped culture and society. Additionally, fairy tales are often clear and lack an ambiguity, which makes it easier for students to understand. Foster's example is that we may not know quite what to think about Hamlet's treatment of Ophelia, but we are sure on what we think about the Queen from Snow White. So here's a picture from the Snow White fairy tale, and even from the illustration, it's very obvious that the Queen is evil and vile. Despite the fantasy and often magical mood of fairy tales, they often have themes that can be connected to real life and therefore can be implemented in authors' stories. Foster notes that the theme of lost children trying to find their way home from the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel often happens in modern situations and has been used in many stories throughout the years. An example that I chose is in the story of Little Red Riding Hood. The most notable theme is a vulnerable girl being taken advantage of and tempted by an evildoer's lies and cons, which in this story was the wolf distracting her with flowers and disguising himself as her grandma, all while pretending to be helping her. This is a theme that has often been used throughout literature and entertainment. In the movie The Lovely Bones, Mr. Harvey tricks Susie by tempting her with a secret hideaway and actually ends up murdering her. Here's a movie clip of that scene.
An opinion. Do you mind taking a look?
Oh, well, actually, Mr. Harvey, I have to get home.
Oh, okay. I just worked so hard on it, and I guess I got excited for someone to see it, but that's okay. I'll show the other kids in the neighborhood. They're going to be very excited about it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's great. I mean, it's really neat. Come on, it'll take 2 minutes. You're probably late already.
I don't see anything.
You don't? You're going to have to be more observant, Susie.
What is it? I washed my hands.
Stop that.
Thanks, Mom. Oh, not beans.
What?
Only one.
One bean?
Pretty neat, huh?
You want a pork chop, honey?
Yes, thank you. Hi.
See? Look at your sister. Great eating habits.
Yeah, but she's older.
Got it?
I built it for the kids in the neighborhood. I thought they could use it as a kind of a clubhouse, or I don't know. You want to be the first one to try it out?
Really?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Go ahead. Be fun.
boys. That considered convenience.
If you do them both, you can save and watch TV with me.
Nah.
I'll make her a plate.
That's it. That's it.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the clip there, but basically what happens is after he traps her in there, he rapes and murders her. Fairy tales have a significant impact on literature, but in today's time period, many fairy tales are extremely outdated in many aspects. Because the stories are so well known in society, it's easy to revise the story to match today's modern culture. This allows audiences to see how sexist fairy tales were in terms of gender roles, but also that society today is very imperfect as well. For example, Disney's Princess and the Frog was adapted from The Frog Prince. A basic summary of The Frog Prince is that a frog asks the princess to kiss her after emerging from her fountain. The princess kisses the frog and he turns into a handsome prince and they get married. This is obviously a very outdated story and not relatable to today's times. However, in The Princess and the Frog, a hard-working black woman named Tiana is trying to save up enough money to buy her own restaurant and accidentally gets thrown into a crazy quest in the bayou. This is a modern version of the story, and in comparison to the original story, it's easy to see how insignificant a woman's role in society was back then. At the same time, throughout the film, you can definitely see the struggles Tiana faced as a black woman in society. So this is a clip from the movie. And it's kind of low quality, but I thought it was important to show because you can obviously see the discrimination and adversity that Tiana faced.
Miss Tiana? Oh, party.
Evening, Mr. Fenner. Mr. Fenner.
I'm smelling beignets.
Gonna be the house specialty once I sign those papers y'all brought.
Yes. About that.
You outdid. What?
A fella came in and offered the full amount in cash. Unless you could top his offer by Wednesday.
Kiss that face goodbye. You know how long it took me to save that money?
Exactly. Which is why a little woman of your background would have had her hands full trying to run a big business like that. You're better off with you.
No, wait a minute.
Love those beignets, though.
No, hold on there. You come back, huh?
Fairy tales are often very simplistic. They all have conflict, but by the end, the plot has reached an easy happily ever after. Because this is unrealistic, especially in comparison to our complicated and morally unambiguous world, it's easy for authors to use fairy tales as references for irony or to create their own ironic versions of the fairy tale. Irony drives a great deal of fiction and poetry and makes for interesting, deep storytelling. For example, Into the Woods is an ironic take on fairy tales. After the first act, everything seems perfect, with Red Riding Hood and her grandma surviving the big bad wolf, Jack becoming rich from what he stole from the giants, and Cinderella marrying her prince. However, just how life can be, everything quickly collapses. Jack faces his consequences, and the kingdom is attacked by the giants. And Cinderella's prince cheats on her. This irony makes for an interesting story and changes the way audiences may think about fairy tales.